Okay, are we on? Oh, we're on. Awesome. Lisa, I'm going to give this mic to you firstly, and you can explain to everyone who you are and perhaps give a bit of a background on yourself.
I think this might be the one question I didn't prepare for. So, Lisa Yewers, Monadelphous Corporate Productivity and Innovation Manager. So I work across a whole suite of different types of projects around innovation as well as improving what our existing remit is. Predominantly within our corporate division, but I also work with our operational sectors as well, which are more at our client front-facing projects. Monadelphous is a construction engineering company, and we work with the mining and resources industry, so with a lot of the bigger clients that I'm sure everyone in the room is familiar with, so no need to list them.
That's awesome. So we have a few questions. Hopefully we won't do too much duplication, but the first question was really pandemic orientated, and what we saw in the pandemic was this rapidly changing landscape, right? And so everyone was dialed up to 100, and we particularly had an organisation from Singapore reach out to us midway through the pandemic saying, look, we're getting rat tests. This is from Singapore. We're having rat tests and we want people to submit a photograph of their rat test for us. We want automation and AI to kick in and start to understand, is there one stripe, two stripes, and start to apply building access to us based on that outcome, which again was dialed up to 100. It kind of, well, how do you know that that's their test? And there's a whole lot of other ramifications to that as well. But have you been able to leverage automation for any COVID-introduced business concerns? What kind of opportunities and what did you do in that space?
So we were just beginning our RPA implementation project when COVID hit. So we actually ended up with the opportunity to pivot quite quickly and include one of our, I guess everyone had them, processes that evolved as a response directly to the pandemic. We had a situation where we mobilise hundreds of people every week out to our sites, and we needed to make sure that those people hadn't been exposed to hotspots. If anyone remembers that 2 years ago, you had to check the map. We had to check if they had been in contact with other people who'd had COVID, and there was a whole list of questions. Our people mobilise on fairly short notice, and so we had to send text messages to them. Our teams were great in our mobilisation area, and they very quickly spun up a solution to deal with all of these people who were mobilising. However, spinning up that solution meant they were using a lot of ad hoc desktop tools. So there was a lot of Microsoft Excel, there was a lot of using the Telstra messaging apps. It was really intensive as far as manual process goes, and because we mobilised 7 days a week, we had all our teams in there hammering out these messages, following up employees who weren't used to getting this message and thinking, oh, I don't have to fill this out. So we, as part of our implementation project, automated a good portion of that particular process, which for us meant we were removing the need for so many of our employees at the head office to work overtime to monitor the responses that were coming in. And really what we ended up doing was similar to what I think Daniel alluded to, is we pushed the most important components, which were the contact with the actual employees who were going out to site. They were the ones that the recruiters spoke to and the mobilisation team spoke to. So the bits that the bot couldn't do were actually the high value people contact and interaction components. And the bots were used to remove the boring update the Excel spreadsheet that I've rung this guy 3 times and sent him a text message. So it was actually a huge benefit for the business, and it gave us a lot of extra kudos for the RPA project in being able to assist with that issue.
That's awesome. We post-pandemic automation, I feel, this is my opinion, focused heavily on financial results. The outcomes of return on investment were very financially orientated. And during the pandemic, or perhaps post-pandemic, I feel now that the goals are more weighted towards employee sentiment, particularly with the retention of employees, particularly at the moment. So with that sentiment conversation in mind, has this been your experiences, and do any of your automations aim to combat the effects of the Great Resignation?
I feel like Monadelphous are probably on the earlier end of the automation journey, certainly compared to some people I know in the room who have been running RPA programs for many years. So the processes that we are automating are definitely at that task level. We are, on the bright side of that, it's often the tasks that people hate doing. They're the repetitive, boring, mundane, oh my God, I can't believe I've got to spend another 3 hours doing this again type tasks. So generally speaking, I think we've had really good reception when we've taken the majority of that work off people. We were also given some great advice when we started on this journey from some other people who had already been there and done that, and that was that you don't automate 100%. And so I think every time we made a real point of saying that to our people who were normally doing that process, there was a lot less stress about, you're going to take my whole job. We were very realistic in saying, we can't do all of it. We're only going to leave you with maybe 10%, maybe 20%. The bot can't replace you. And I think that message really came across there. So people felt that they were actually adding the higher value through those messaging concepts. Yeah.
No, that's cool. And I love that you said your automation program is new, and there's a number of people probably in the audience who their automation program is new. It may actually even be a new initiative. And that's different to a mature COE, for example, or an organisation that's been doing automation for a long time. So I'd really value if you could provide some insight for perhaps some of the people in the room as to the challenges you found, but the actions and the activities that you've taken that would aid them to get started on the automation journey. Where should they start? I really like the idea also of whether citizens can become involved in any of the development activities as well.
I was reflecting back on this last night, actually, and I went back over some old notes about lessons learned from the project. Oh my God, there's so much that you forget about until you look at your notes. It was such a massive journey for, I think, the whole project team, and I do have some of our key developers in the room, Rob and Steph somewhere as well. And I think they would say the same. Those two have been amazing. We were very strategic in looking for people within the business who had the capability to learn the developer skills and already had those internal networks within the business to, I guess, create confidence, to help alleviate any of that sense of fear that bots were going to take over. I think that was a really strong success factor for us as a business, and it really spoke to some of our cultural differentiators at Monadelphous as well. And likewise, they have continued on in those positions, and I still see their roles as really important as far as business development of further RPA footprint growth within the business. I think it's easier to get developers externally or to grow those skills in-house than it is to build the knowledge and the networks within your own business. I think another thing that we did, and again, it was a learning for us as we sort of spoke more to our leadership team about what RPA was, is that we changed our language. Most of our projects in other areas talked about cost efficiencies and cost reductions and revenue increase and so forth, whereas we really tried very specifically to change the language for RPA and talk about hours recovered for the business, so that there was a massive focus more on, we're actually giving you hours back as opposed to reducing your headcount. And part of the reason was most of the processes we were targeting in our first implementation were small processes. They weren't a whole job. So it was very unrealistic to say, okay, there might be $800,000 worth of savings here, but it's a spread across 12 different roles. So you can't get rid of an individual for that type of task. Inevitably, that messaging is also visible to the users in the business as well. So they could see that that message was consistent, that we were telling them, we were also telling leadership. We also found that during COVID in particular, and like every other business, we're madly scrambling to deal with all the different situations and unexpected things that cropped up. So being able to remove some of that boring administrative rote work from people's task list meant that they could concentrate on problem solving these new things that kept coming at us. I think that also helped people just be more relaxed about the whole project, and there was that fear factor disappeared. We, one bit of feedback, there's so much I could say, I'm trying to pick the bits that I wish I'd known more about. We also found, we had some feedback from one particular customer within the business afterwards who said to us, I was catching up with him post getting his bot into production, and he said, well, some feedback for you is we really haven't heard very much. And I thought, geez, sorry, I've really slipped up there and obviously not done enough comms. But he said, no, that's actually not what I meant. He goes, it's been so quiet. We haven't had the noise that we normally get from an implementation project where everyone's going, oh my God, this broken, that doesn't work. I've had to work 3 weekends in a row to get this working and the training's taking up too much of my time. We didn't get any of that with automation. And it was a really unexpected bit of feedback, and it wasn't something we'd even thought to look for. So I think going forward from hearing that feedback, it's something that we've tried to also make more clear to the business is that, yes, this is change, but it's not going to have the same level of pain as what a full system implementation comes at you with.
No, that's fantastic, and I know the guys from Rio. They unfortunately couldn't be here today, but the advice they've been given us it resonates with what you're saying. They apply a sort of the 80-20 rule, where they believe that to be successful in RPA inside their business is to know their business, and so they draw upon experts and SMEs and other people from their business first to form the basis of their COE. And then they teach them the BA or the RPA pieces, and of course they rely on partners for delivery as well, and fantastic ones like Mohit's Minefields, for example. And so that seems a very common and very sustainable, but also very sensible way of approaching it. Know your business first, because you can then empathise with the pain points. That's obviously what they see, and it sounds like that's the same for yourself.
That's It reminds me, we had a fabulous business partner who assisted us with the implementation and coached our developers. What we did find is in our first couple of bots, their developers were taking the lead on the definition and the build of it, and we were sitting in the room to observe and learn. But what we did find is that our people knew where the bodies were buried in a process. So we knew when the partner hadn't dug enough into a certain reply to go, no, hold on a second, we know that's not the whole answer to how that works. You need to ask this in 3 different ways to understand the process variations. So if we hadn't had people from within the business involved at that level, I think we would have had a lot more pain trying to build a full bot that got into production in the speed that it did. So I think when you're building a bot, there's so much importance on the detail of what happens, like keystroke detail, that you need the individuals from the business to be highly involved. Regardless of who's building the bot, make sure you've got those SMEs involved.
Oh, that's great. And really, thank you very much, Lisa, for being up here. I know there's going to be another panel up here later on, and so one question, and I know Gordon's going to be up on stage here, is the financial aspect of the projects and how cost recovery or how projects are actually funded to be able to obtain access to those SMEs or to transition them in your team is definitely going to be, hopefully, a conversation that comes up on that panel. Gordon. So look, we're done up here. Thank you very much again, Lisa, and thanks everyone for your attendance. It's been fantastic. Oh wow. Thank you. I don't have a plane to get, so I'm fine. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew and Lisa, for your insightful journey on ESG and automation. I think, Lisa, you're spot on that the business SMEs know much more better than any consulting firm about the process. So don't rely on any consulting firm, including Minefields, that guide you on SMEs. We can't be SMEs. We're here to enable you to do it much more better. And I think we want the community, the clients to do it themselves. And glad that you have taken that journey. So thank you once again for your time. Really appreciate you coming on the stage. The next session is on Eric, with Eric Chang from Komatsu. He has specially flown from Sydney to come and present and share his insights.